Live from Jerusalem, we have breaking archaeological news, a miraculous find from the first temple era. But does this discovery affirm or deny the Bible? Welcome to the Can I Trust the Bible live stream. I am Raj Nair here in San Diego, and on your screen, you will see a dear friend of mine, a brother, really, Yoav Rotem, an Israeli tour guide. Shalom, Achi. How you doing, brother?
Shalom, shalom. I'm
It's
okay, surviving here, trying
it's
to do our
so
best.
it's so good to see you, brother. Hey, we have so much to get into, but let's not bury the headline. What did they find? Where did they find it? Why is this thing so significant?
So first of all, maybe I would show it to everyone. I have it on my phone over here. Maybe it's the best way to show it. This is a seal that has been found in Jerusalem, um, in the southern or south of the southern wall excavations, as we call it, where we have the stairs leading to the Temple Mount, this area. This seal is dated in between the 9th to the 7th century BC, and it's unique. It's never found before, and it has a lot of elements that can bring us into our Old Testament stories of Jerusalem. First of all, maybe let's describe it. It's a black stone that has kind of maybe a king figure with a long shirt or something that looks like, and it has wings. And what's super interesting is the influence of the design from the Empire of Assyria. These figurines can be found in Assyria, and if we go back to the book of Second Kings chapter 18, we know that the Assyrians visited Jerusalem. You and me, Raj, visited, and we love this place together. What we call the wall, the Hezekiah's wall, when Hezekiah prepared the city of Jerusalem to the Assyrian king coming, Sennacherib. And apparently, this is a obviously this we know from Assyria and from other excavations that there is an influence over here. They've been here. They are the empire. Judea was a smaller kingdom, and this figurine is in influence obviously by that. What is this seal? This seal was made by someone who had money. How do we know the level of the of making it on the stone? It's something very small. It has two holes on both sides, so they could make it, they could like a pendant. And the guy probably who made it was Hoshea. This is the name. How do we know? Because both sides of the figurine, we have a Hebrew name, who someone wrote later than the figurine that was made there. How do we know? Because again, the quality of the writing is completely different. The writing is apparently is the son, Yoezer, the son of Hoshea, inherited this as maybe it was an amulet, but for sure it was kind of like a seal that they could sign documents, and he literally wrote his name, Yehoezer, the son of Hoshea, and and he left it forever for us. It's an ancient Hebrew name in the mirror writing, so it could be used as a seal. And this is basically, again, the level of it. The name, wait a second, the name, Yoezer, the son of Hoshea, is a name that we are familiar with. He's one of, in the book of Chronicles, First Chronicles chapter 12:7, the name in kind of a shorter way is found among the soldiers of King David. And also in the book of Jeremiah, they are mentioned. It's mentioned Jeremiah 43, verse 2. We have again the name Azariah. Yoezer Azariah may be the same name, the son of Hoshea. This is a guy from Judea, connected to the aristocracy of Jerusalem. which the seal completely is showing us. And he left his name, and we found it. What is like 2,600 years after his time, even more.
Wow, wow, that is so cool. And there's little details about this thing that I want to talk about. But I was reading this article, and one of the researchers who uncovered this thing said this, and one of the accusations that you often hear for people that are defenders of the Bible is, well, how do you know back in the day that these people were literate? How do you, obviously the Bible is newer than you claim it to be, because people back in the day, they couldn't read or write, they were dumb or whatever. But here's a quote, I want to read it to you. It says, contrary to what might be commonly thought, it seems that literacy in this period was not the realm only of society's elite. People knew how to read and write, at least at a basic level, for the needs of commerce. So, Yoav, here's the question. So, for Bible believers, should this artifact bolster their faith, or make them worry? Does it line up with the biblical narrative?
This is I mean, if you read the Bible, this is exciting because it's just what the Bible is describing. I mean, and this is maybe one of the most amazing things to come to Jerusalem these days. I've heard some of your former speakers talking about it. We literally see kind of like a computer game, how everything is built up 3D, like as you walk forward, but in a way how it used to look like. And I think Yuval Baruch said, Dr. Yuval Baruch, you quoted him. I think if I'm not
Yes.
wrong, and he's basing what he's saying is not only about because of what they found here in the seal. They found seals with names. We know one thing we're missing. We're missing the scrolls of the Bible that people used to read from, because they did not survive, either because of the fire of the destruction of 586, also because this is a biological material that has been didn't Jerusalem, and with all the rain, and unlike what we have in the what we call the Judean desert, or the area in the desert so close to the Dead Sea, which we have things not all the way to the Old Testament scrolls, but we have 2,000 years and more the scrolls of the Bible from Qumran. So definitely people had to know how to write and read, otherwise people will not put things so people can read it. Also, they had to study the Bible, and people needed to go and learn it by heart. And if it's the students, and later on other people at least knew how to read, for basic at least.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think what's really interesting about this seal is that the time period, like if you would have found this Assyrian looking thing from 1700 years ago, it would have been, why is this here? But when you read the narrative and the chronology of different empires, it's exactly where you have the Assyrian conquest of Judea, and they destroy Lachish, and famously Sennacherib and his army weren't able to conquer Jerusalem. But you have this Assyrian image on this thing, and Paleo Hebrew. And I think if you're watching this, I think we should just pause and appreciate how old this thing is. We're talking maybe 2,700 BC. To put that in perspective, that's like the gap between this pendant and David and Solomon is the gap between like us and say George Washington. It's so miraculously old that we have this thing, that honestly I think we should just be celebrating and cheering and going nuts that you're finding this stuff that validates the Bible, that gives you confidence that you for those of you who don't know, because you don't know, but Yoav and I have probably led, I don't know, 20, 25 trips together in Israel, and everything they're finding from the Galilee to the city of David, it's like you were saying, this 3D puzzle piece where we're not even necessarily worried about what archaeology is going to find, because it just seems to always validate what the biblical narrative is. And there's some things that you and I talk about, which is other findings that validate the Bible that aren't maybe as famous as the Dead Sea Scrolls or as famous as the Tel Dan Stele. And one of the ones that you and I really love to geek out about is this place called Sha'araim. And if you read in First Samuel, let's see, 1752, this is immediately after David kills Goliath. Like immediately after, you will read this verse that you've probably skimmed over reading the story of David and Goliath and been like, okay, that's a random verse. Not sure why I need that. So let me read it to you real fast. So it's one verse. It says, then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Sha'araim road to Gath and Ekron. Now, Sha'araim, correct me if I'm wrong, Yoav, I think was discovered in 2006 or 2007.
Exactly.
Why,
Yeah.
in your opinion, we even made a video about this back in the day. Why, in your opinion, and we're going to go down the list of a few recent discoveries that validate the Bible. Again, why, in your opinion, is Sha'araim a significant discovery?
So before Sha'araim, just take us back to the seal. The seal, I think there's no dispute about this period of time. The time of the 7th, 8th century or the 700s BC, and we find a lot of stuff, including the wall I mentioned from the time of Hezekiah the king, and the Hebrew language and the names that we can find in the Bible, among the sometimes among the people connected to the government of the Judean king in Jerusalem. But the debate and the academical dispute is going back to the time of David, a few hundred years earlier, which means 3,000 years before our time, the 10th century BC, because the findings up until Sha'araim were showing almost nothing, and the Bible describes a lot. And obviously, when you go to Jerusalem, the old Jerusalem, you see where we know that the city of David used to be. It's built on a very big slope that every earthquake, every catastrophe that happened to the city, and many happened, the destruction is absolutely crazy. I mean, even rebuilding it, this is why the city is always being built. And there was always a question, because the kingdom of Judah seems to be, in the time of David and his son Solomon, seems to be influential, at least in the area, fighting against the Philistines, which were settled in the coastline where Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gaza are located. And right in the meeting point between the mountains and the coastal plain, we have low hills. We call it the Shephelah. And these low hills were the meeting point between the people of the mountains and the people of the lowland or the plateau. And over there, they found, a city with a wall that only a strong regime. Building a wall to a city is something. I mean, it's a small one, not big, but still, building a wall is it's a project. It's a project. You need people, you need money, you need someone investing it. Who can invest it? Someone higher. And what they are finding there, it's all dated because it's not a layered site. It has only a much later Ottoman or Bedouin remains on top. So they directly got to the time of the 10th century over there. It has 2 gates, which that's the name Sha'araim means. Sha'ar in Hebrew is 1, Sha'araim are 2 gates. And there's even biological material like olive pits that it's been dated to this time. And a lot of the findings are showing us Judean. For example, the lack of pig bones. I mean, we do find in this period of time remains of bones of animals that people used to eat. And we find various of animals, including, by the way, in Jerusalem, they even found fish bones. Jerusalem does not have any. If we talk about it later in the time, it shows power, trade. Fish came from the Nile, from the coast of Lebanon, but that's a later time. So these bones are showing us, the diet of the people. And if we don't have pigs, who don't eat pigs? That's a good question. Together with that, also some, as you said, you mentioned the Paleo Hebrew writing was found over there with the topographical description. It shows that we have a Judean influence over there, right
Mm.
in the time that we have a strong king like David and Solomon that have been described in the Bible, and it actually enlarged the proofs that we have to the words of the Bible, this city.
And I think that's what's so fascinating is because you have this city that, you know, for years there was the discussion, there was no King David, right? Then they find the Tel Dan Stele, and they're like, okay, fine, maybe there was a King David. But the extent, the power, the way the Bible describes the grandeur of the kingdom of David and Solomon was totally overblown. You guys are exaggerating. Get off your Bible high horse. Then they find Sha'araim, which, as you mentioned, means two gates. And we did this whole video about it. And literally, it has two gates. But it proves unequivocally, first off, that, well, as you were mentioning, it is a Jewish Judean settlement, but it proves archaeologically that the Bible was not exaggerating, was not propping up the extent and the reign and the power of the kingdom of David and Solomon. And so you're just walking in the hills and boom, here's this archaeological proof that, first off, most people don't know about it. I didn't know about it until you told me about it. So going along the line of these, like the pendant we're talking about today, Sha'araim, are these little things that, no, they don't make the front page news here in the States. People don't really talk about them. It's like, oh yeah, that something found. Okay, moving on. But I always like to rewind because the goalpost of faith has been moved so much where we don't appreciate that 100, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, people doubted the very existence of these people. They doubted the existence of these places. They said Bible was changed and exaggerating. And every day, this black pendant that we're talking about today, Sha'araim, it confirms these micro details that validate the Bible. You know, one more I want to get to, because we could go on for a long, long time.
You have to mention that people did not have this tool of archaeology. People may ask, wait a second, you're finding and finding. No, archaeology started the beginning of the end of the 19th century, and this is a slow process. It's not that there's thousands of people going scattering around and digging and finding things. No, it's slowly. Even this in Jerusalem, there's people living over there, finding, getting into excavation sometimes only because you renovate a place or so. This is a concept I don't think everyone knows, that we don't go and dig everywhere. And this is why Sha'araim was exciting, because when the Gurfinkel and when the archaeologists from Hebrew University, when they found it, they test the ground and they realized that they don't have to dig deep to get to the level of the 10th century. This is what attracted them to dig over there.
And I think that's a hard thing for people to contextualize, even someone who's been there 30 years, to understand just how much there is to dig up. I remember we were driving somewhere in the Galilee, you and I, a few years ago, and you're like, yeah, that's something from like 4,000 years ago. We'll get to it eventually. I'm like, get to it eventually. Start digging now. He's like, well, if we dig there, then we have to dig there. If we dig there, we have to dig there. If we dig there, we have to dig there. And this stuff costs money. And to your point, in Jerusalem, I'd be worried if you need to renovate your house, because good chances are there is something very significant underneath your house. Okay, let's talk about another discovery, revelation that I think is fascinating. And it's funny, we talk about some sensitive political issues, sin, LGBTQ, all this stuff, and the comment sections are pretty fine. But the one thing that people have a really hard time with is understanding that maybe their interpretation of a certain word in scripture has more than one meaning. And here's the thing, at this channel, we are Bible nerds. We are conservatively in love with the validity and trustworthiness of scripture. So I don't want this to rain on any of your parades, but understanding the original Greek and Hebrew should excite us. And so this is one of those discoveries that we're about to talk about right now that could potentially ruin some of your Christmas and Easter, what do you call it? Theater plays, because maybe there's a detail that we've been taught that isn't exactly the way that it was meant to come out. So there is this stone that was on the corner of the Temple Mount called the trumpeting inscription. They found it. It's 2,000 years old. Yoav, I'll let you explain what they found that it says. But connecting that to the trial of Jesus. Again, this won't affect theology, just maybe a small detail in scripture. Again, I know sometimes it's hard to let go of some of these details. This detail that we're about to describe has zero to do with theology, so don't get worried. But it's interesting. So let's talk about the trumpeting inscription that was found. What does it say, and why does this maybe add a new detail to the crucifixion story?
A tour guide, I have to walk step by step because I think as like I walk. And the seal that we started talking was found in the southern part between the southern wall of the Temple Mount from the time of Jesus, the second temple time, to the city of David, where the city of David was. Now, the entrance, this whole area is called the Archaeological Park of Jerusalem, has stairs leading to these gates, and these stairs, some people go in many groups. We've been there a few times reading at Acts chapter 2, talking about the holiday of Shavuot and the Pentecost, and the context with the tomb of David, which says he was buried in the city of David, and Peter is talking about it in his speech over there, and the fact that there are other languages over there because many visited the temple. So I like to put things, and I think this is what every Bible reader gets when he comes over here. Mm-hmm. The context. Mm-hmm. The context of the world of the Bible, understanding in the world of the Bible the words of the Bible, and that's something that it's hard to do when you're outside of here, from the seasons of the year and what blooms and harvest, what you harvest first in terms of fruits and things mentioned in the Bible, together all the way to stories that we know in the Bible. Like you mentioned, and in the corner, in the southwestern corner, we have this stone that fell during the destruction of the year 70 by the Romans from the top corner. You see, I see in my imagination, this is the corner, and the stone fell, and they found it in the 90s when they excavated the street next to the western wall. The inscription is written in Hebrew that we until today read from 2,000 years ago. It's a Hebrew that the Jews adopted in Babylon. All right, when the Jews are returning from Babylon after the exile of 586, they're coming back and building a second temple, and they're using this Hebrew, and this Hebrew will stay with us until today. And the same writing, I can read it. My daughter started just first grade. She can go and read these letters over there. This is crazy. So exciting.
Pause. I think that's an extraordinarily important, prophetic, miraculous idea, that this stone that we're talking about, that's 2,000 years old, your first grade daughter can walk up to it and read it. That is the letters, unbelievable. Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
And the original one is the Israel Museum. They put an amazing replica at the site, and the inscription says, Leveit hatki'ah lehachriz or lehavdil, to the trumpeting house to separate or to announce. Probably to announce there is a broken piece. And the assumption is that this is the place they used to blow the trumpets, announcing something from the temple. Or separating. What do we separate? We separate between the holy day, the holy day of Shabbat or holidays, and the regular days. Up until today, you know it when you're in Israel. Sometimes they put a siren or shofar when Shabbat begins. But there's another thing that they used to announce from the temple. We have discussions in Jewish sources that are parallel to Jewish rabbinical sources, talking about a call that could have been heard in Jerusalem early in the morning, before dawn time, probably right before dawn time. There's discussions between rabbis when exactly was this call, and it's called the call of men. Now, men in Hebrew, gever, even in the sources that are discussing it, it's referring to a man sometimes as a rooster, maybe because that this call is coming early in the morning, like a rooster crows in the morning. Now, where this takes us to a context, I want to put us in a biblical context for a moment. One more detail I should add. We also have rabbinical sources parallel to Jesus' time that recording the fact that the roosters and chickens were not allowed to especially around the temple, especially in Jerusalem of the time of Jesus, the second temple time. Why? Because they were jumping from courtyard to courtyard, and if they were digging into something that is not kosher or unclean or impure, they're bringing the impurity with them. This is, I mean, for us it sounds insane, but that's the reality. And they were forbidding roosters and chickens in Jerusalem. So when Jesus tells to Peter about a rooster, what is the rooster? And I actually sent you before we went live, I told you go home or check the word in Greek. And if you check the word in Greek, it says alektor. Alektor in Greek, in biblical Greek, means can say a rooster, but also a man. And what was the call that was in the morning that Jesus refers to? Because Jesus been to Jerusalem before as a child, and he knew, and Peter knew Jerusalem. They were both very engaged in the temple reality, and definitely with criticism the temple people and everything. And if you make 1 + 1, you get the man's call as a call of trumpet. What was it? It was calling for a shift in the temple, probably the early shift or the first shift of the morning, cleaning the ashes from the altar and doing some works in the temple for the priests who work there.
Dude, that's just, oh, it's so cool. It's so cool. Like, I think sometimes it honestly demystifies the Bible a little bit. And again, if you are like pro rooster, more to you. But the fact that like
I like the rooster.
It becomes a little bit less like mythological when you realize that like it wasn't just this like chicken at the perfect time crowing. It was, hey, before the man's call, you're going to deny me 3 times. It's like very tangible, very biblical, very earthy, very real. And to me, that's exciting. You know, there's all these little details that you find out when you go to Israel. Like, again, not to ruin your Christmas or Easter traditions, but Jesus was certainly not born in a wooden barn. He was born more than likely in a cave in Jerusalem. And you see these caves everywhere to this day. You know, Bedouins live there. Normal Palestinians live, you know, have things going on underneath these caves in Bethlehem area. I've been in a bunch of them in Beit Jalam, Beit Zahur. Like, you see these massive caves where they would store the animals. And so like to have like a wooden barn and a manger was probably also made of stone. So when you go to see these like reenactments, you're like, okay,
there's
fine.
A new place. Raj, you haven't been here for a long time. I need to show you a place with you know, where the cave is part of the house, where you can really see a house and the cave is one of the rooms of the house.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And another one that also gets people kind of fired up, and we're not going to talk about this one right now, but maybe we'll have to have you back. We'll talk about where was Pentecost, where was Shavuot, where did the tongues of fire. That's a different discussion for a different time. We're sticking with the archaeology. We've talked about this black pendant that has Paleo Hebrew on it that shows the perfect alignment of Hebrew and Assyrian culture. We've talked about Sha'arayim. We've talked about the trumpeting call inscription. So here's a kind of summarization question. What do you say, Yoav, as someone who lives in Israel, as someone who lives in Jerusalem, who grew up in Israel, who served in the IDF, who's as Israeli Jewish as they come? What do you say to people that say that the stories in the Bible, the Old Testament, what have you, are fairy tales?
Ooh. So they haven't been to Israel. They haven't walked the ground. That's one thing. Or they didn't listen well to their tour guide. And the question is, you know, you need all the details in front of you. Some people need some more, and we haven't found everything. You can wait. But if you want to come now and to see what we have, I mean, we can see the numbers. 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. And then below it, we have 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, it's working like math. And it's there. It's in the ground. You just need the tools to understand it. As I said, the archaeological tool was not exposed to people even in early Christianity.
Yeah. Well,
even 400 years after Jesus, when Christianity actually started, they don't have the way to get to the stones from Jesus' time. So it's basically a tool that we have today, but together with that, you have to go back to the language. You have to go back to the culture. As I said, seasons of the land is super important. As just been to the States on my speaking tours, having rain in July, massive rain, and people telling me this is obvious. I said, no, it's not obvious, because in the land of the Bible, summer is dry. If you have rain, it's a catastrophe for the fruits that are about to come right now. So that's kind of like the whole context that you need to get. This is why coming here is important.
I couldn't agree more. And Yoav Rotem, if you want an amazing Israeli tour guide, I could not recommend my brother enough. He is incredible. You can find him on TripAdvisor. But one last question. As someone who is a dear friend of mine, I've been to your house many times. I love your children, your wife. I just think you're an incredible human being. But I'm going to give you the microphone, the platform for this last couple minutes, which is this question. And I'm asking just because Israel's in the news. This is an archaeological video, but I want to ask you this one last question. You know, a lot is being said about Israel, and I know you've served in a special unit of the IDF. I'm not even going to give any more pretext. Last thing, you end it however you want to. What message from Israel, from an Israeli, from someone who's served in the IDF, from a Jerusalemite, what message would you want to give my friend here?
Thank you for doing it. But you know, everything we spoke right now, for us, for me, I mean, you paused us when I mentioned my daughter can read this, you know, the inscription for 2,000 years ago. For us, this is home, but not for the last 73 or 74 or 75 years since 48. For us, this is home for the past 3,000 years, at least. My grandparents, who came from Iraq, got to Iraq because of the 586 BC exile that the Babylonians just when they destroyed the first temple. And many people, when they attack Israel, when they try to get into the current situation, which is all over the news right now, they don't get the truth because they don't learn. I'm not talking even about the Bible. They don't learn the history. They don't know what people, I mean, you know, it's painful for me to hear things that are completely mistakes. You know, you can debate, you can talk about people's feelings, and people, you know, getting killed is not good, definitely. But why things are happening, you need to have the knowledge, and you need to study the truth, the history, the reality. And I want to sum up by one thing: to see it all, you must come over here. Obviously, take me as your tour guide if you can. It's a little advertisement, but no, just kidding. I mean, come over here, see this land. The people are real. The people are real. The land is real. The Bible is real, and come to Israel. That's.
Toda rabah, achi. I love you
Thank you
so much, my brother. Yoav Rotem. Find him online. Find him on TripAdvisor. He is an incredible man. He is a brother of mine. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Raj.
Hey, I'm Raj Nair. Thank you for watching the Can I Trust the Bible YouTube channel. We hope this video gave you compelling evidence to trust in the validity of the Bible. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And ask your questions in the comments and share the video with your friends and skeptics. Thank